Hey everyone, Ralph here. I'm super excited to show you in this video how you can use the new date picker that Shopify released just 3 days ago. It allows you to add this date picker functionality into the Shopify checkout using their checkout UI extensions. In my case, we're going to be using this to build this date picker that allows buyers to pick the date that they want their order delivered. What's more, we're also going to make it conditional to only show it on certain products that has a particular meta field set. In this video, I'm going to teach you exactly how to do that in next to no time, and by the end of it, you've built this. You can use it on your own store. You can build it as a public app. You can do whatever you want with it, but let me show you how it works. So I'm just going to refresh to make this go away because this product actually don't have the meta field set to true anymore. And now we're going to go into the store. We have this product right here. I have the meta field that I called show shipping date picker. It's set to false. Let's change it to true and go back to our checkout here and then refresh. And now we're going to see that because this product that is in cart has this meta field, we now get to see this. And it just has to be any product in here that has it, and we'll show this. And you can change the logic to whatever you want. Now let's select May 19th here and go ahead and complete this order. So what that does is that it's going to save that field or value to a meta field on the order. And allow you to use that downstream in Flow via APIs wherever you want to use this information. So if we go and check the orders, here's the order that I just placed. And we can see here that there's a meta field that I've named requested shipping date that says May 19th. So in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to build that. But first, I just want to show you something exciting that we have going on over at Gadget. So between May 13th and 20th, we're hosting a fully remote and fully free Shopify app development hackathon. And we're giving away 5,000 in prizes for the best projects. And if you enjoy building this checkout UI extension today, you could be entering this category called best use of Shopify checkout UI extensions. So if you enjoyed this tutorial, make sure to check out our hackathon that is coming up, gadget.dev/hackathon. Again, fully remote, fully free. It's going to be super fun. I promise you to make sure to check that out. But enough of that. I know you want to get into the tutorial, so let's get going immediately. Okay, let's get going. So I have 3 windows open on my computer here. First, we have a browser where we are going to be using gadget.dev to build the Shopify app backend. We're also going to be using the Shopify Partners dashboard. Then I have a code editor. I'm using Visual Basic, Visual Studio Code. We're not going to be doing any Visual Basic coding here today. So any code editor that you prefer, you can use. It's just for editing some extension files on our local computer. So use whichever editor you prefer. And then we got a terminal here that we'll be using to work with the Shopify CLI, because Shopify CLI is the only way that you can generate extensions for these checkout UI extensions that we're going to build. But we're going to start in Gadget. And if you've never heard about Gadget, it's essentially the fastest way to build Shopify apps. As you're going to see in a minute here, you get fully hosted Shopify app backend and front ends that you can build essentially any app with. Today, we're going to build a checkout UI extension, but if you want to build anything else, you can do that with Gadget. So you can go ahead and start or create an account for free by just clicking start an app and log in. I actually already have an account because I work at Gadget, so I'm just going to go ahead and click log in. And here I'm just going to select create an app, and then here's the screen that if you've signed up for the first time, this is the screen that you're going to see at the end of the sign up flow. What Gadget is asking for here is just for us to name our application. So I'm going to call it shipping date selector, and then I'm going to hit get started. And what Gadget does here is that it spins up a fully hosted app backend and frontend that is ready for us to build whatever we want with. You can see we have some data models that were, or the ability to add data models to our backend here. We got some files, including our front end files that is hosting our front end, and then a bunch of other things. We're not going to walk through all of those here today. If you're curious to learn more about it, we got a bunch of quick starts and guides and tutorials. Just go to gadget.dev, and hopefully you'll learn a little bit about how the Shopify connection or integration works in this tutorial. So we're gonna go ahead on this home screen to click Connect to Shopify. And here we're gonna select the Partners Dashboard flow. And here we're then asked for the Shopify Client ID and Shopify Client Secret. And to get those, we have to go to our Shopify Partners Dashboard. So if you don't already have an account, do sign up for one. It's required for you to create apps and to create test stores. It's completely free. Naturally have an account, so I'm just going to log in. And if it's your first time, go ahead and click over to stores, add a store, create a development store, and then go through all of these things. And then what you need to select is a test store and select the developer preview and choose this checkout extensibility. If the store that you're using here today does not have this checkout extensibility selected when you create that development store, it's not going to work. So make sure that you have that. And if you already have stores and you're uncertain if that's something that you configured, you can see by going to stores, you should see the checkout extensibility preview shown here. If your store doesn't have that, what we're going to do here today won't work. So make sure to create a new one. But the reason that we jumped in here is that we want to create this app so we can get the information that Gadget was asking for. So we're going to click Create App here, and I'm going to call this Shipping Date Selector as well. Gonna click Create App, and here we just got the client ID that Gadget is asking for. So I'm just going to paste that in there. Then we got client secret, paste that in there as well. And then I'm going to hit connect. And what you're seeing on the screen here is essentially Gadget asking what are the Shopify API scopes and models that you want to use for your app. So you can think about these as all of the various Shopify APIs that you can integrate with depending on what your app is supposed to do. So there's a bunch of them here. We're not going to be using everyone or everything, of course. We're actually not needing to have anything, but in order for the OAuth to work with Shopify, we need to have at least something. So I'm just going to go ahead and select products. I'm going to select read, and then I'm just going to select this single product here. We don't need everything else. And if you do want to play around with it, you can always come back and edit and add things eventually. So just select whatever you think you need. And if you do select a bunch of things, just be sort of cognizant that this event option here is really noisy and will lead to you getting a lot of data from Shopify that will quickly sort of fill up your local database on your Gadget app. Then if you're building public apps, we got a bunch of options for you here as well. I'm not going to go through that. Again, there's information in our documentation. So just click confirm here. And what Gadget does is that it creates a couple of data models that will store the product data about the shops that install our apps, etc. I'm not going to go through that in this tutorial. I have other tutorials. And again, on Gadget's website, you had a bunch of tutorials and guides that explains that for you. So we're going to be focusing primarily on the extension here today. So what Gadget tells us to do here is to copy these and paste them into Shopify. So I'm going to copy the app URL. We're going to go back to the partners dashboard, click app setup, and then we'll be pasting that in here. And it's just to tell Shopify that, hey, this is where on the internet my app lives. Once you've done that, you can go ahead and click over to Overview. And if you weren't building extensions, you could go ahead and select a store to install this on and start building whatever app you're building. But because we're using extensions here today, we actually have to generate an extension and have that live on this app. So when we install it on a store, we also install that extension. And to do that, we're going to be using the Shopify CLI. So let's head over to our terminal here. And what we'll be doing here is using the Shopify CLI to generate an app scaffold. Once we have that app scaffold, we'll generate an extension. And I'm not sure if I said it earlier, but this is the only way to create Shopify extensions. So this is really a step that you can't skip. So find a folder on your local machine where you want to store your Shopify extension. I have one that I call just shipping date selector. And once you're in there, we're going to be running a command that is npm init at Shopify /app at latest. Sometimes I have a hard time remembering dashes and slashes and whatnot because English is not my native tongue. So what we're doing here is that we're kicking off the Shopify CLI and it's asking, what's your app project name? And this is going to be the folder name on our computer. So I'm just going to call this shipping date selector demo. And then we're asked which template do we want to use for this CLI project. I'm going to choose Node because it's what I'm comfortable with. And then the Shopify CLI is downloading a bunch of files and folders, creating those on your local machine and getting ready for us to create this project. So I'm just going to be silent so we can fast forward until it's done. So the next step to do here is just to go into this folder. So we're going to do cd shipping date selector demo. And if we do an ls in here, we can actually do this. We can see that we have some folders and files. And what I'm going to do here is just delete the web folder because we don't actually need it, because if we want to use a front end, we already have that out of the box with Gadget. So this scaffold that Shopify generates have things that we really don't need because Gadget is both our backend and our front end. Whereas if you wanted to self-host something somewhere, you could use the CLI to generate that Shopify app for you. And what we want to do next is that we want to run npm run dev to continue setting up our app here. And here we're going to be asked to, if we want to create this project as a new app in Shopify, or if we want to connect it to an existing one. We want to connect it to an existing one because that's what we created a few minutes ago. So we're just going to do no connected to an existing app. We'll get a list of all the apps that we have. I have a bunch because I do a bunch of various projects as I play around. But the one that we just created is going to be at the top. So I'm just going to go ahead and select that. And then we're asked which store would we like to use to preview our project. I'm going to use Catalina wine mixers. And again, it needs to be a store that have the checkout extensibility preview set up. So remember to select a store that has that. And that then starts the server. We don't need to have that running, so we're just going to kill it. And now we want to generate our extension. So to do that, we're going to run npm run Shopify app generate extension. And I've had some dependency issues, but it doesn't seem like that's a problem right now. If you have dependency issues, you can run -- force, but try this first and make sure that you use this without using force. And here you got a list of different types of extensions that you can select from. So there's many different types of extensions that you can build with the CLI. Today we're going to be using a checkout UI, so find that in the list and then just click OK. And then we're going to name our extension. And we've been naming a lot of different things in this tutorial. So we named our project, we named our gadget project, we named our app, and now we're being asked to name our extension. And it's worth knowing that you can have several different extensions on a Shopify app. So it's always useful to name it something that when you look at it inside the admin, inside your dashboard here that we'll do in a minute, you can tell what it is. So again, in my case, it's going to be shipping date selector. I'm sticking with that, but if you build something else, just name it something that is sort of self-explanatory. And then what languages do we want to work with? I'm going to do JavaScript and React. And if you're following this tutorial and are not used to JavaScript and React, all of the code that I'm providing you down below in the description, you're not going to be able to use. So that's always worth knowing. Okay, so now we have created our extension. We can go ahead and open it and just have a look at it. So I'm just going to go ahead and find my development folder here. And these are essentially the files and folders that we've generated here with the Shopify CLI. And what you can see here, we have an extension folder that is called shipping date selector. If you had created several extensions, you would have several folders. And in here, there's really two files that we're going to be working with. We have the Shopify UI extension.toml, which is our configuration file. And then in the source folder here, we have our index.jsx file that holds the extension itself. It's where we're going to be having some of our logic. It's where we're telling where we want to show this. It's where we're essentially providing all of the code of what it is that we want to render in checkout. But what we're going to go ahead and do now is that we can finish this installation process here. So let's go ahead and select store to install. I always open it in a new tab in case I want to come back to this. And then we're going to be selecting the Catalina wine mixers here. And something that is worth knowing is that when you're using Gadget to create your Shopify app, you actually get a lot of things out of the box. If you've created Shopify apps in the past, you know you got to set up OAuth, security headers, webhooks. All of those things are taken care of for you by Gadget. So we can just go ahead and install this app and pass the OAuth flow without having had to do any kind of configuration. It just works out of the box. And similarly, out of the box, Gadget also provides you with an embedded React frontend that is hosted in here. You have the files in here. So when you use Gadget to create your app, if you want to publish it as a public app, what you get out of the box is actually ready to take all of the technical checkboxes required for the Shopify App Store listing. So you're just left with building your logic and building your UI, and then you can ship it to the App Store. We're not going to be using the front end in this demo, so I won't really go through it, but we got a bunch of good tutorials showing you how to use this to build various types of apps. If you wanted to extend what we're building here today with the Checkout UI extension, you could use it to allow merchants to configure the extension by providing how far into the future you shouldn't be able to select a date, etc., etc. But I'm going to keep this tutorial easy. We won't be touching it, but it's worth knowing that it's here if you want to have an embedded UI for your app. And just to show in Gadget as well, we're not going to be using Gadget that much because it's not really a backend app that we're building here today. But we can go ahead, go to connection. We can see that the shop that I just installed here, Catalina Wine Mixers, We have API access granted. We have our webhooks registered. And what I can do here, if I want to, is that I can go ahead and click sync. And what that does is that it downloads all of the data from my Shopify store to my local database here in Gadget. Here you can see all of the products. So depending on what API scopes that you selected, you can go ahead and sync and make sure that your Gadget app has a copy of all of the relevant data on the Shopify store. You can also access the Shopify stores that have installed it. So you can see I have one record because we installed it on one store. And here you have all of that information, which allows Gadget to, or allows your app on Gadget to access the data without having to go to Shopify and possibly hit those rate limits. And Gadget listens to webhooks, does nightly reconciliation. So whenever something changes in Shopify, Gadget will get a webhook and update the data that you have in here. There's a bunch of other cool things that you can do with Gadget when you're building apps, but I have other tutorials for that. Make sure to check those out. But here, let's go ahead and continue with the checkout UI extension. So what we're going to start with is essentially go ahead and load up this extension. And let's start with running npm run dev. And what that's going to do is to run this extension on our local machine and then allow us to tunnel in to preview that in our store. So what I usually find works well for me is that rather than just going in and pasting this here and then clicking this, I almost always first open the online store like this, and then I click this, because otherwise I usually get this like, hey, your store is behind a password, etc., etc. So we can close this. And what I forgot to say here, this is just sort of our extension dev console, which allows us to open the extension that we're running here and that we have the code for here in a new window in our checkout. And here you can see this little bit right here is sort of the extension that we have running here. So if we go ahead and change this, we can see that the code here changes the value here. I can actually go in and zoom in a little bit to make it easier for you to see. So what we want to do now is that we have this extension, but we don't want this banner. We actually want the extension to be showing up when we go to this page, and we want it to display here and allow us to select a date in one of these date picker components. So to do that, we're going to need to be changing two different things. First of all, we got to go over to our checkout toml here. Actually going to be, see if I can change this, just get some more space here. And there's a bunch of things in here that we won't necessarily be covering here. But the one thing that is important is to know that we have what's called an extension point, and that tells the or defines for your checkout UI extension where do you want to render it. By default, it's set to checkout dynamic render, which allows it to be dynamic. The merchants can select where they want to put it, and the default location is here, but they can go and drag and drop it in their checkout configuration to have it wherever they want. But in our case, we actually are opinionated where we want to put it. We want to put it over here. So we're going to go ahead and change it to a particular value. And in the link that I'm providing in the description, I'll link to documentation from Shopify that tells you all of the various options that you have. So understanding when you create a different UI extension, you might want this to show up somewhere else. So we change it to checkout shipping methods render after, and that's the location right here. And then we want to update our index.jsx as well, because we don't want to show this banner. We actually want to show something else. So I'm going to go ahead and copy paste something here. I'm not going to have you sit through while I'm coding. And I'll explain everything that we have here. So we're just doing some regular imports of React and useState. We got a couple of various components from the checkout UI extension React library. And it's worth knowing that when you're building Shopify checkout UI extensions, you're using Shopify checkout UI extension component library. You're not using Polaris if that's what you're used to. They're different. They have different capabilities. And here we can see we also need to define the checkout shipping methods render after, which is the same that we had in our TOML. And then we just have a couple of things here where I have some date formatting to make sure that the date format that we're using complies with the meta field that we're going to go ahead and create in a little bit. And then we're just trying to find the next date that should be able to be selectable by a buyer. And then we go ahead and set the meta field namespace and key that we want to store the data on our order. So we haven't set that up. So let's actually go ahead and do that. So in the store here, if you have never set up a meta field, just go to settings. You go to custom data, and we're going to be storing this information on the order because we want to make sure that when someone selects a date, we want to store that on the order that they created when they selected it. So we'll go to orders, we'll add a definition here, and then I got to check my no, I don't have to check my sheet because we got it right here. So we're going to call it the requested shipping date, and then we're going to be changing the namespace here to custom. And it's important that whatever you put in here is what you have in here, or this is not going to be working. And then you can give it a description such as this is the date that the buyer has requested to have the order delivered by. And I do recognize that shipping date and delivery date are two different things, but I'm too lazy to change the variables that I have all over the place. And it shouldn't be a Boolean, that's my bad. It should be a date. And then we don't have to set a minimum or maximum date. We can just keep it as it is. So we got shipping.request shipping date, which is what we have over here. And once we've done that, we can toggle over here again, because now we've created the meta field in Shopify that allows us to store this data. And then we just have some more date configuration here, making sure that the past is not selectable, and in my case 2 days into the future is not selectable either, because you don't want someone to be able to select tomorrow as their delivery date, because it's unlikely that you're going to be able to get it to them. So this sort of configures how far into the future you should be able to select it. And then we're using that to set disabled date ranges for the date picker. It's just a prop that we're going to pass into it. We set a bunch of states in React here, including using the meta fields that we have defined. Then down where we render it, we have a couple of handles here. So we want to handle when a buyer selects a new date and make sure that we're capturing that and sending that off to Shopify if that's the date that they end up using. And then we're also going to have this little checkbox that we need to handle as well. And then at the very end here, we just have what this checkout UI extension returns, which is just some text that says, I want your order delivered a specific date, the checkbox, and then the date picker that will show. And this has a couple of props here that we've defined further up in our extension. And right. No matching export. I forgot about this. So the the CLI that I'm using is actually using an old version of the component library here. So that's actually good that we bumped into that. So let's go and check what the latest version of that is. You can see here it says 0.26.0, and this is, so the date picker component, you can see that it complains about it here. The date picker component was published 3 days ago, and I'm actually not sure why my CLI isn't using the latest here, but we're just going to go ahead and update this to 26 here instead to be on the latest. Make sure that you check that, because otherwise this won't work. You will get this error. And we had to restart the server anyway here, because whenever you do changes to the TOML file here, which we did here, you actually have to restart the server. You can do all of the changes that you want to index.jsx, and Shopify will hot reload that for you, but whenever you change the configuration file, you have to restart the server. So we can go ahead and run npm run dev. We've changed the package.json and our extension toml here. Go ahead and close that, and we won't need that either. And then we just grab this, and you have to, even if you had the previous URL open, you actually get a new URL. So make sure that you copy this one and don't use the previous one. And here now you can see that we have this want your order delivered a specific date, set a selected target delivery date. So all of the code that we have in here is showing this. And just to show you that, like what I mentioned with the hot module reloading, by just doing this in here and saving, it refreshes, and you can see that it updates immediately. And like I said, you don't have to restart the server whenever you change something in here, but if you change the TOML, you have to do that. Let's go ahead and show you how this works. So select the target delivery date. Let's pick May 31st. I'm using a bogus gateway, so I just have to put in some bogus data. Let's put security code. Oh, it needs to be 3. And that created an order. So we're just going to head over to our order view here. This is the order that I created. And here you can see requested shipping date has May 31st as the date. So now we've set up this very neat checkout UI extension that allows buyers to pick a date in checkout, and that is stored as this meta field. Now, I just got ahead of myself a little bit, loading up another checkout, but when I showed this a few days ago, a lot of people said, like, hey, would it be possible to make this, well, now I lost the name, make it configurable in the sense I only want to show it for certain products. I don't want people to be able to pick a shipping date or delivery date for all of my products. I only want to do it for certain products. I want to have the configurability to do that. And yes, you can definitely do that. So in the next step, what we're going to do is to add that configurability and essentially update our extension to look at if any of the products in cart has a specific meta field. And if it has a specific meta field, we're going to go ahead and show the date picker. If none of the products in cart has that meta field, we're not going to show it. So that is pretty simple. What I was going to do here was just load up another checkout. so we have that. So this is what we set up. We haven't done any changes. We have a product in cart here. Now, what we want to do is to change both the TOML file. We have to update our extension to look at that meta field. And then we have to create another meta field in the admin and then go and set that on a product. So let's start with the TOML file, because we never really did anything here except for changing this extension point. Now you have the some things that are commented out here that says meta fields, and we want to use this because writing to meta fields you can do without setting access to them here, but whenever you want to read meta fields, you have to define access to them here. So I'm just going to look at my cheat sheet here. And what we will be naming this, because I have them sort of in the code files, we're going to just comment out this meta fields here. And then we have namespace and key. And then there's some boilerplate values here that we want to replace. So we want to replace this one right here with checkout. And then we're going to be replacing the key value here with show underscore shipping underscore date underscore picker. I picked a very self-explanatory meta field key for what we're about to do. So we got to remember to restart the server, but first let's just go ahead and look at the code that we're going to be using. Similarly, I'm just going to go ahead and copy paste that and just point out a couple of differences that we're doing. We're not really doing any changes here. Now we are going to be setting some more states, but the big thing that we're doing here is, right, there we go. I did not replace everything that I copied. I just copied it at the end of the file. So that was a little bit confusing. So there's a couple of things that we do. We use, we import something else here, use app meta fields. A lot of these things are the same. But we have a few more states that we're setting in order for us to manage collecting meta fields rather than just writing to them. And the big thing that we're doing here is this piece of code right here, where we're essentially going for every line item in the cart or every product in the cart. We go and check if they have, or if that product has a particular meta field that we're setting, and if it has that value set to true, we know that we should be showing this date picker. So this is essentially the key aspect that we're changing, and essentially allows the logic to look at, hey, does any of the products in cart have this meta field set to true? If it hasn't, don't show it. Don't show the date picker. If it does, show the date picker. And then we're just adding a little bit of logic down here to make sure that we're only showing the date picker if we've set this hash show date picker meta field value to true. And it's set to true here in string rather than Boolean, because it's how it's stored. The meta field that we're getting back is stored as a string, so I'm just passing that along if that's confusing at all. Otherwise, most of the other thing is the same, because we're really just changing another parameter and saying, is this true or not? So let's go ahead and restart our server here. And while we're doing that, we can go ahead and go to our Shopify admin. But first, actually just do this so we don't forget. Replace that and open this. And again, every time you restart the server, you have to do this. And so what we said here is, if we go to the TOML file, we created these configurations here saying, hey, we're going to look at the namespace checkout and key show shipping date picker. So we got to set that up. We want to create some values in here so this actually there's some data that it can do. So we're going to set up another meta field. If you remember, go to settings, custom data, and this time we want to do it on the product. We did it on the order last time, but in this case we want the logic to look at, does any of these products have this meta fields? So this meta field needs to be stored on each individual product. You can store it on other things as well, customers, etc. But in our case, we're using products. So I'm just going to be copy pasting this in here. And again, similarly to what we said in the previous meta field, these have to be exactly the same as in here as they are in your code file, in your logic. Otherwise, it won't work. It's like any variable. If you don't have the correct name, it won't work. And in this case, like I said, we're going to be using a Boolean here. So that's stored as a true or false. And then I'm just going to be hitting save here. And when you add a meta field on a product, you can go ahead and set that on the product page if you want. You can automate it using the backend of Gadget or anything else. But let's check this helmet that we got. It is currently null, which means that it's not true. So what we would expect to see here if we refresh here, and it's already actually showing it, is that we're not seeing the date picker here. And we're actually showing the minimal snowboard. So let's go ahead and actually change that. So we're using the product that we are looking at. So let's add to cart. Let's go to checkout. Continue to shipping, and still you don't see this right here, and that's expected. So let's see what happens if we set this product right here that we have in cart. Let's set this to true, hit save. And if you update things in the index.jx, it refreshes, but whenever you change something in the database in Shopify, like updating a meta field, this doesn't automatically refresh. So you have to go ahead and refresh it in your browser. And what do you know? This shows up. And just sort of to, you have it right here, you can see it, you can click it, and sort of just to hammer in the point, let's change this back to false. Let's refresh this. It's not in here. And just to show you like the way that it works is, let's add something else to cart. Let's do the goggles here, add them to cart, check out, and go to shipping. And you can see it's not here. Let's change it on the other product. Again, only one, the way that I've set up my logic is that only one of these products needs to have it. So let's change this show the meta field on this one, and here you got it. Because this one now has it set to true, the logic says, okay, at least one product has it. You can go ahead and select this, and just same that it worked previously, we just go ahead and place an order. We will see how that appears on the order that we just placed. You can see May 29th. So that's really it. It's very simple to do. And the steps that is remaining is to just publish this, publish this extension. So I'm not going to walk through that in this tutorial. I'm going to leave a link that explains you how to do it. It's a few simple steps, and then you'll be able to install this on any store. Checkout UI extensions only available to Plus Store, so that's worth knowing. If you don't have a Plus Store, you can't install it. If you want to create a public app using this, it can only be installed by Plus Stores. Okay, that wasn't that hard, right? So we use Gadget to create a Shopify app. We use the CLI to create a Shopify checkout UI extension. We install that on a store, and then we configure the checkout UI extension to display where we want it, display when we want it, and store the selected date as a meta field on the order. It's worth calling out the fact that we're storing it as a meta field on the order means that it's available downstream for other services. If you want to use it in Flow, you can. If you have some sort of service that is reading orders, they have access to that meta field, so they can use it. You can build logic around making sure that you can ship or deliver the package to the buyer based on the date that they've selected. Now, if you enjoyed building this app, if you're interested in building some more apps or playing around with it, I would 100% recommend checking out our upcoming Shopify app building hackathon. It's called The Future of Code. It's hosted by us at Gadget. It's going to run from May 13th to 20th. It's fully remote. It's fully free, and we got $5,000 in prizes. And because we just went through the Shopify checkout UI extension tutorial, maybe you have some idea of something else that you want to build because you can compete in a category that is called the best use of Shopify checkout UI extension and win prizes. And of course, you would enter the best overall category as well. So make sure to go to gadget.dev/hackathon to find out more and register now. If you want to learn more about how you build apps with Gadget, building functions, check out the UI extensions or AI apps, we're also running these training sessions in a week's time. So make sure to go to gadget.dev/hackathon to find out more. But that's it for this video. If you liked it, I really appreciate if you give it a thumbs up. If you want to have more of these videos in the future, make sure to subscribe to this channel and you'll be notified when I have more. But that's enough for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope it was helpful, and I might see you in a future video. Bye.